Bektemir Melikuziev gets weighed in by Gabe Rosado, knockout of the year candidate. Now, prior to this fight, I'd only seen Melikuziev maybe twice, and he looked pretty impressive physically. Quick hands, quick feet, bounces in and out of range, finds different angles, and a brutal body puncher. That was the impression I got from him the couple times I had seen him before. But on the downside, if you're talking about him moving into world class, because they were apparently talking about matching him against Kovalev, the downside is he was only 7-0, I believe, going into this fight. Yeah, he was 7-0. And from a technical perspective, very upright. He had been rounds. I think he'd been 10 rounds in one of his fights. I could check now, but let's keep the flow going. He had been a few rounds, but yeah, technically very upright. And at super middleweight, he's quite short. I think he's about 5'9", something like that. So not the tallest guy. And if he's going to go up against Kovalev, a 5'9" guy, I know Kovalev's seen better days, but it is a little on the short side for a light heavyweight, unless Kovalev was looking to come down to 168, I'm not sure. But either way, in this fight here against Gabe Rosado, Melikuziev was quite cautious early on. He was doing a bit of a scouting mission in the first round, but he managed to catch Gabe Rosado with some hurtful body shots, and it was clear that Rosado was hurt, but we know Rosado is as tough as old boots. Rosado could be classed as, a high-level journeyman? And some people might ask, what's the difference between a journeyman and a high-level journeyman? Well, apart from the fact that a high-level journeyman is more talented than your standard journeyman, the high-level journeyman is usually the type that always comes to win. And that's Gabe Rosado. He always comes to try win, no matter who he's in against. He's similar to Derek Chisora in that sense. A lot of losses, but more dangerous than his record would suggest. Going into this fight, Gabe Rosado was 25-13-1. So it is a kind of similar record to Derek Chisora, right? And similar, like I say, in the sense that even though he could be classed as a high-level journeyman, does have a lot of losses, he always comes to win. And in Chisora's case, he usually comes to win. And he's more dangerous than his record suggests. Now, Gabe Rosado's never been known as a big puncher, but he was able to score a one-punch knockout here against Melikuziev. And does that raise questions about Melikuziev's chin? I guess we'll see in due course. But as I say, in the first round, the bully, as he is nicknamed, Melikuziev, came out, managed to hurt Rosado with some body shots, which are Melikuziev's trademark. And then he basically battered him against the ropes and managed to score a knockdown right before the end of the first round. And at that stage, it looked like maybe the writing's on the wall. We all know that Rosado is very, very tough, but going down so early in a fight, it's probably going to be difficult for him to come back from this, particularly against a much younger guy, because Melikuziev, I think, is 25, 26, something like that. And he's got that energy that comes from being young. Gabe Rosado, again, real tough guy, but doesn't have that youthful exuberance that the bully had. Second round, it was kind of more of the same, but Gabe Rosado was looking for the punch, which would eventually end the fight. And that was a right hand. Okay, it wasn't a perfectly straight right hand, it was kind of an arcing right hand, which would catch, eventually, Melikuziev right on the butt of the jaw, beneath the ear. I mean, couldn't have caught him any sweeter in the third round when he finally lands the shot. So he tried to time the same punch several times prior in the fight, but the timing was slightly off, the range was slightly off. I think one of the times he managed to connect on Melikuziev's shoulder or on his chest. He didn't quite manage to connect on the chin. And perhaps, I don't know whether this is the case, but maybe somebody could ask Gabe Rosado, perhaps he deliberately landed on the guy's chest. Sometimes fighters do these sneaky things. They'll draw you into a full sense of security by making you think that their right hand is not that accurate. But then again, maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was just Rosado not quite finding his timing and range early on with the right hand. And the reason I say sometimes they'll make you think that a particular punch is not that accurate, it's so that you don't worry about it. So that you do come forward and you do attack because you think, he's not that accurate with that right hand. He's not going to catch me. Again, I don't know if Rosado did that or whether he was just still trying to find his timing and range. But the first few attempts of that very same right hand that ended the fight didn't connect on the chin. But finally in the third round, with Melikuziev very much in, forward motion, he was very much moving forward and attacking. The caution that he showed in the first round was dispensed with really after that first knockdown. After that knockdown, should I say, in the first round. After that, Melikuziev started bouncing and finding the angles and attacking and what have you. I guess he thought he could get the Gabriel Rosado out of there the way he's got his previous opponents out of there, just by overwhelming them with the power and the speed and the footwork and the body shots and all this kind of stuff. Now, I was watching a Chris Andre post-fight video about this, and he talked about the positioning of both guys, whereby Gabriel Rosado is lower. Even though he's actually the taller guy than Melikuziev, he's lower than Melikuziev when he throws this right hand. Melikuziev, as I said earlier on in the video, he is upright. That is one of his shortcomings. Not much bending at the waist. And in this position here, he's upright. Is he going to the body? Perhaps he's going to the body. Perhaps he's going to the head. But he's in a more upright position. So if both guys are swinging their backhand, Gabriel Rosado's right and Melikuziev's left, Melikuziev, if Gabriel Rosado continues on this trajectory, his head is going to be lower than Melikuziev's head. And if you're in an exchange and you're both in punching range of each other, you want to be the guy, generally speaking, whose head is lower, because there's less likelihood that you're going to get caught on the chin. If you get caught with your head up in the air like that, that's usually when it's going to be most damaging. So if you're going to be in an exchange, get that chin down, preferably get the hands up. Obviously, you're throwing one hand. And just be lower than the other guy. So he's out in the open. He's more exposed when he's throwing than you. You can fight a bit more compact in that exchange. Be a bit more compact in the exchange. And that's what Gabriel Rosado was. His stance, his knees more bent, and he was just in a better position. He obviously timed it, whereby there was some kind of tell, clearly, on Melikuziev's left hand. And he tried to punch several times before in the fight. On this occasion, he beat him to the shot. A tremendous right hand, which landed right on the butt of Melikuziev's jaw. And down he went face first. And normally, as the commentators pointed out, when you see a fighter go down face first, the fight's usually over. And it was in this case. Melikuziev looked surprised. I have to imagine he was embarrassed. He, I'm sure, never imagined he would lose a fight in this way so early on in his career against a guy like Gabriel Rosado, who, again, tough and always plucky, always comes to try to win, but not a noted puncher. In fact, Gabriel Rosado's a guy who's come up through the weights. This isn't even a guy who's a career super middleweight or anything. So for him to knock out Melikuziev with one punch like that, what does it say about Melikuziev's chin? It could be one of those situations where Rosado just hit lightning in a bottle. Not to say he was lucky, but what I mean by that is he just caught him in the perfect place while Melikuziev's momentum was moving forward. And at the same time, Gabriel Rosado was in a great punching position, knees bent, turning his hips over, and just catches him right on the butt of the jaw. It was like the perfect storm, lightning in a bottle, bang. I don't want to say one of those once in a career type shots, but when you land that accurately and your opponent is coming at you and you're well balanced, you're turning into the shot, you don't necessarily have to be the biggest puncher to be able to knock a guy out or down, even if his chin isn't that bad. See, this is why I make the distinction on this channel between a big puncher and a prolific puncher. A prolific puncher isn't necessarily a guy who has the biggest one-punch knockout power. But what he is somebody who can land big punches consistently throughout a fight and fight after fight on a consistent basis. See, some guys have got tremendous one-punch power, but they're not very good at landing that big one punch consistently. And therefore, their records might not have a lot of knockouts on them. Then you have other guys who maybe they are tremendous one-punch knockout artists. They're prolific and they're big punchers. But then you get other guys, for example, like Vitaly Klitschko, who he certainly wasn't feather-fisted, but he didn't hit as hard as his brother, Vladimir, although he had a higher knockout percentage. Now, obviously, you take into account the quality of opposition and all that, but for most of their careers, it was the case that Vitaly had a higher knockout percentage than Vladimir, despite the fact that Vladimir, according to several mutual opponents and sparring partners, hit a lot harder than Vitaly. But Vitaly was consistent and he was less shy about letting his hands go than his brother Vladimir. And this is how he was able to continuously get these knockouts, because he would just land so frequently in a fight with his big power shots. You see? Now, I say all that to talk about Gabe Rosado. He isn't that prolific at landing his power shots clean. There may be guys out there who have a similar level of brute force power to Rosado, which is not extraordinary, but they just have a better knack at landing the kind of shot that Rosado landed here. Better timing, maybe better hand speed, better judgment of distance, whatever the case may be. There will be certain guys out there with a similar level of brute force power, but they just have a better knack of landing accurately and in those kind of situations. Right on the butt of the jaw, right when the guy's moving forward at him. You understand? Being a knockout puncher, people think of it as just, well, something you're born with, something you can hone in the gym, but it's more about physicality than skill. Well, actually, no. Physicality, of course, is very important, and I don't want to say that it's exactly as important for every puncher, but skill is a big part of being a knockout artist. Even somebody like Deontay Wilder, who is, technically poor, but when it comes to landing his right hand, he's skilled at that. Make no mistake about it. Deontay Wilder is very skilled at landing that right hand. As Paulie Malignaggi has said many times about Wilder and about Adonis Stevenson back in the days. He may be a one-trick pony, but it's one heck of a trick. Tremendous trick. So, as I say, there may be other fighters with a similar level of brute force power to Rosado, which is not, nothing special, but they just have a better knack of landing in those vital spots at the right time to produce more knockouts. And in this instance, Rosado was able to land, and he was able to take the unbeaten record of Bektemir Melikuziev in, as the video title says, stunning fashion. And the interviewer, I think it was Chris Mannix, in the ring after the fight, said, "This is the biggest win of your career." And I was thinking about it like, is this the biggest win of Gabe Rosado's career? If it is, it's kind of a shame, because a plucky, tough guy like him, you would have thought would have taken a bigger scalp than Melikuziev at some point before. Because Melikuziev, although he was, quite highly touted and whatever, and he had a decent amateur record, but he wasn't like, as far as I'm aware, the best amateur in the world or anything. It's not like when Povetkin turned pro, he was the dominant amateur at super heavyweight, or Vladimir Klitschko, right? When he turned pro, the dominant fighter, or even AJ. Not to say that he was the dominant super heavyweight in the world, but he was definitely in the top few. Melikuziev, as far as I'm aware, wasn't quite in that bracket. But again, those of you who know more about it, because I have had a look at some of his amateur highlights on BoxRec, and as far as I can see, he wasn't quite at that level as an amateur, but he certainly had plenty of experience. Point being, I would have thought that Rosado had a better win. You know, somebody more experienced than Melikuziev, more than a 7-0 guy. But if this is his best win, hey, it's his best win, and I'm sure you'll get some good fights off the back of that. Now, a lot of people are saying it was silly. Hindsight's always 20/20, and I want to see what these people were saying before the fight, because there's a lot of people after the fact who come out and say, oh yeah, it was terrible matchmaking and this, that, and the other. I knew it was too early. This is not even a shot. Because I was on one of G-Man's videos, his post-fight for this. And there was somebody in the comment section saying, how is it a surprise? Okay, so I guess you must have put loads of money down on it then. Because G-Man was talking about how surprised he was by the result. And somebody in the comment section saying, how is it a surprise? Melikuziev was only 7-0. Rosado's had like 40 fights. Well, again, if that guy weren't surprised by it, then he must have put plenty of money down, right? he must have put plenty of money down if he thought this was going to happen, because he was acting in the comments as if it was inevitable that Rosado was going to win. So anyway, what I will say is, yeah, in hindsight, you can look at it and say it's like putting a 7-0 heavyweight in against Derek Chisora. Would you really do that? If you got a highly touted heavyweight prospect and you pay Derek Chisora enough money, yeah, and your guy's only 7-0, would you really want to put him in there against Derek when he's motivated? You probably wouldn't. You know, and the same goes for Gabe Rosado in hindsight. But with Melikuziev, if he was one of these amateurs like a Beterbiev, like Lomachenko, even Rigondeaux, right? These guys who had hundreds of amateur fights and they won everything, then you can put them in their 7th fight against a Gabe Rosado type fighter. You can do that. And in most instances, you'll be fine. And like I say, maybe the difference was that Melikuziev was never really the elite guy in the amateurs that the fighters I just mentioned were. Didn't have quite that level of refinement of a Lomachenko, and, you know, just not as good as those guys, as a Lomachenko, Beterbiev, Guillermo Rigondeaux, and so forth. So anyway, I'll leave you guys to talk about that in the comment section below. But it was a fantastic win for Gabe Rosado. Tremendous punch. Almost certainly one of the best punches he's ever landed in his pro career. Maybe the best punch he's ever landed in his pro career. Certainly one of the most important punches. And he will get more opportunities off the back of this. You know, I've kind of complained a little bit in the past about why Gabe Rosado keeps on getting these opportunities, because he comes across as a real solid guy. You know, he just comes, the way he comes across in interviews, he comes across very well, right? He's a likable kind of person in terms of his public behavior and what have you, and the way he talks and whatnot. But boxing is boxing. And whether I like somebody or not, why is this guy constantly getting opportunities when he hasn't had a significant win for so long? You understand what I'm saying? But in this particular instance, he proved that he did belong. He proved that he did deserve this opportunity against the guy. You know, I call it an opportunity against the guy who's 7-0. But again, they were looking to match him against Kovalev. So, yeah, he's going to get more fights off the back of this, and I certainly won't begrudge him for getting a bigger fight off this win, because this is not like a plucky performance where he's showed heart but ultimately came up short. No, this is a fight where he's just knocked this guy out with one punch in a fight that he weren't supposed to win. So off the back of this, yeah, I could definitely support him getting another opportunity. Maybe a world title eliminator or something like that. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Gabe Rosado, KO of the Year candidate against Bektemir Melikuziev. Stunning. Come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide range of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&A sessions, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got a Discord server where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. There's no contract, no commitment, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.